TCU did the impossible in 2022. In 2021, the year before, Michigan was the first team that started off the year unranked in the preseason AP Top 25 to reach the college football playoff. Of course, they lost to Georgia 34-11, getting blown out by the Bulldogs in the Orange Bowl. But they were the first team to achieve that feat. TCU in 2022 ups that. Not only do they start unranked and are predicted to have a losing record in 2022, they go undefeated throughout the regular season, beating several top 25 teams. They lose in the Big 12 championship game to Kansas State, who they beat in the regular season, but they enter the college football playoff as the 3 seed. They beat Michigan 51-45 in the Fiesta Bowl. So they're the first team in the college football playoff era to win a semifinal game while starting the preseason unranked in the AP Top 25. And they upped it up another level by losing by even more points to Georgia in the national championship game. So TCU in 2021 Michigan, 2022 TCU, overachieving preseason expectations by a mile. TCU just came out of nowhere and did the unthinkable. Max Duggan went to New York, was, I think, the runner-up to the Heisman Trophy, finished in second place behind Caleb Williams. Quinten Johnson was taken in the first round of the NFL draft as a wide receiver. It's just absolutely phenomenal. And this team was, they were top 5 in NFL draft picks for the 2023 NFL draft. Loads of talent. Sonny Dykes did it all in his first year with Garrett Riley as his offensive coordinator and Joe Gillespie as his defensive coordinator. Gillespie stays, Garrett Riley is off to Clemson, and in comes Kendall Broyles from Arkansas. And now we begin 2023. TCU is near the bottom of the barrel in terms of returning production. They're at 130th nationally. They only returned 33% of their 2022 production. They lose Max Duggan, Quinten Johnson, Keandre Miller. They even lose their backup running back who replaced Miller in the college football playoff when Miller went down. They return tight end Garrett Riley, but they also lose several offensive linemen. They lose Taye Barber at wide receiver too. And they lost some guys from defense as well. Hodges Tomlinson, Dee Winters, many different players who had a huge impact for TCU. TCU's defense, while it finished 91st in the country in points allowed per game, was top 50 in defensive passer efficiency. They were an underrated defense. They got smoked by Georgia in the national title game. Their offense was the only reason they beat Michigan. I mean, their defense got 2 pick sixes, but Michigan's offense outside of that, especially in the second half, was rolling. This team took opportunity, took elite coaching, both at the head coach level, the coordinators, the assistants, took underrated talent. Gary Patterson was and is a great recruiter. I don't know what he's going to do now that he's gone from Texas, but we may never know. But great coach. And Sonny Dykes assembled all of that together and put together a 13-2 season. The question ultimately is, can he do it again? Can TCU repeat its 2022 success? And a lot of people say no. And it's understandable. They're 130th in production. They don't have the talent to reload immediately. Like, they don't even recruit consistently in the top 20, let alone top 25, top 15, nowhere close to the top 10. They have gotten some high caliber talent in certain spots over the past few seasons and recruiting cycles. Zach Evans, a running back who went into the NFL draft after transferring to Ole Miss, being one of them. But all in all, this team doesn't recruit at the greatest level. They lost their offensive coordinator to Clemson, and they're nearly the worst team in Division I college football in returning production. So what's going for them? Why can they repeat their success, or can they not? Is it impossible? Well, it is unlikely. That's what I will say. It would be very bold to predict TCU to go back to the college football playoff and run it back. It would be very bold. But there are a few things that are going for them. And some of them are based on opinion, others are more based on fact. The one that's more of an opinion, more of a hunch, is a schedule that I think is rather weak. Starting off against Colorado, who's being overrated because of the amount of new bandwagon Colorado fans who are picking them to go 9-3 or 10-2, which will not happen. Colorado, Nicholls, on the road at Houston, hosting SMU, hosting West Virginia, playing at Iowa State, hosting BYU. At Iowa State could be a rough game. Iowa State ranks near the top of the Big 12 in returning production. Hunter Deckers is an underrated quarterback, and their defense is vicious. However, take that game out of the equation. Iowa State looked like a mess last year. They have a new offensive coordinator, and they were disappointing in 2021 as well. Entering the Kansas State game, Kansas State is viewed as one of the better Big 12 teams almost unanimously. TCU could realistically be 7-0. And TCU beat Kansas State last year, and Kansas State loses Deuce Vaughn. Adrian Martinez, although he was injured, he was a big part of their success for the early portion of last year. He's gone. For now, he's a Detroit Lion. They return all of their offensive line, but TCU again beat this team last year in the regular season, and they're going to want revenge for losing to them by a field goal and a bad decision on 4th and goal last year in the Big 12 championship game. After playing on the road at Kansas State, they play on the road at Texas Tech, host Texas, host Baylor, and play on the road at Oklahoma. Now, you're going to see the schedule on the screen here in just very shortly, but bear with me. You hear that schedule, and outside of Texas, maybe road games against Kansas State, Iowa State, Texas Tech, maybe Oklahoma, maybe a home game against Baylor. That schedule in the beginning of the year is very easy. TCU has a lot of time to figure out their team. I'd say Colorado, Nicholls, Houston, SMU, West Virginia, 5 games in a row where TCU, I think off of talent and coaching alone, could coast and go 5-0. They have a lot of time to get the right pieces together, figure everything out before they go on the road in Ames, Iowa, and take on Iowa State. And Iowa State doesn't have a lot of talent either, and their coaching over the past 2 seasons has been questionable. BYU, Baylor, these are teams that have good trench play. I think they have very underrated coaches, but from a talent standpoint, they're still behind TCU, and I think TCU has better quarterback play and better skill position play than both of those teams do, which matters a lot in college football. Kansas State and Texas, I would say, are the toughest teams. Oklahoma has a lot of talent, but I don't trust in Brent Venables as a head coach. Texas Tech is intriguing. Joey McGuire's doing a heck of a job down there, especially at recruiting and forming connections, but all in all, I still think they're a year or 2 away from breaking out, but they're a popular dark horse candidate. So TCU's schedule and its strength depends on a lot of variables. Like the Big 12 is very fascinating. It's full of variability. And I think TCU, the fact that they're in Texas, made the playoff run, and they're using the portal to the best of their ability. They have over 10 incoming transfers. They could be the best Big 10, not Big 10, but Big 12 team when Texas and Oklahoma depart. And I really don't like Oklahoma this year. I do love Texas, though. I think Texas is the best team in the Big 12, and it's not even close. But can TCU repeat their success? Given the fact they face Texas, they go on the road to Texas Tech, Kansas State, and Oklahoma. They crushed Oklahoma last year. They barely beat Texas Tech and pulled away last season. And they had to pull away from Kansas State, too, in the regular season. There are so many games for revenge to be enacted out on TCU. No, TCU isn't going to catch anyone by surprise. If anything, it's more likely they're going to be entering the season overrated than underrated because of their success last season and how that plays into the polls, media hype, etc. The Frogs have the 38th hardest schedule in the country and are the 17th best team, both according to ESPN's FPI. I think their schedule might be, if you were to adjust it by overall talent and other things, in my personal opinion, I might have it lower than even 38th. Kansas State and Texas and Baylor, but Baylor's my number 25 team. Those are the only three teams on this schedule that are ranked. Texas and Kansas State are certainly top 25 teams. Baylor in that 25th spot, I'm always kind of iffy with. Texas Tech, maybe Oklahoma, maybe BYU could be close, but I don't think they're going to be playing a lot of true top 25 teams this season. They have a great staff. I think Sonny Dykes is a top 10 head coach. Looking at his body of work at SMU, looking at what he did at Cal, Louisiana Tech, and now here at TCU, I think a top 10 head coach. First year in the Power 5, yes, but SMU hadn't had a winning record since the death penalty, and he resurrected that program. And within a year, he took a team that went 6-4, 4-8. They were bad in 2019, went 7-6 in 2018, and he very quickly made them into a top 10 team. Even with that blowout loss to Georgia, TCU was still a top 10 team last year. That was one of the worst games of the entire season. They used all their energy and they used the mulligan to beat Michigan, a game which, in my opinion, Michigan wins 7, 8, 9 times out of 10. But they won the time that mattered, and you get credit for that. The problem is, when they faced Georgia, all the cards, everything at their disposal just ran out. I mean, Georgia's just that much better than even the 10th best team in the country, and even the 7th, the 6th, the 8th, even the 5th, and maybe even the 4th. Like, college football, typically there are really only 3 elite teams at that level, maybe 4, maybe 5, maybe if you want to stretch it, even 6. In some years, it's only 2. College football is a very top-heavy sport. TCU, where they are top-heavy compared to the rest of the league, is wide receiver. They bring in John Paul Richardson and JoJo Earle from the transfer portal. Now, I don't know about you, but I think those are very good additions. And I think that overall, this team at wide receiver will practically reload. I think everywhere else there will be steps back, whether it's offensive line. I think defensively, it will be hard to see this team statistically get worse because they allowed 100 points in combined 2 games, and that really puffs up the defensive stats in a negative way. It balloons the points allowed per game. So I don't know if statistically they'll be as bad, but I think overall and through the eye test and watching them play, the defense will also take a step back under Joe Gillespie. They lose a lot of production, and the offense too getting worse. The offense and the defense are not separate units. One side of the ball does affect the other. Think time of possession, think turnovers that give the offense back the football. Tight end, Garrett Riley returns, and I think that is huge. TCU overall has the 19th best recruiting class in the transfer portal. It's really phenomenal. They're bringing in Tico Brown from Missouri State, a defensive lineman. They actually added a good amount of incoming defensive transfers. They're bringing an interior offensive lineman from Maryland in Colton Deary. Dylan Wright, a former 4-star, 5-star recruit from Texas A&M who transferred to Minnesota. Now he's transferring to TCU. Jalen Robinson, a wide receiver from Ole Miss. Rick Diabreu, a defensive lineman from Eastern Carolina. John Paul Richardson, Willis Patrick, another offensive lineman, but this time from former Deion Sanders Jackson State, and just a lot of other players. JoJo Earle, do not forget Trey Sanders, 5-star recruited by Alabama, had a few seasons where he was a 3rd-string, 2nd-stringer, didn't really work out. But John Paul Richardson, in a broken Oklahoma State offense, when Spencer Sanders went down, he had 503 receiving yards, 4 receiving touchdowns. He was top 150 in receptions in 2022. So, underrated player coming to TCU, several underrated players overall. They have the number 24 overall recruiting class, according to 24/7 Sports, which contains 25 3-stars and 11 4-stars. So, I was mentioning how they typically have not recruited in the top 25 or close to it, but TCU broke the top 25 with a combination of high school and transfer portal recruiting, which is impressive, builds a good foundation for future success. The offense should once again be explosive, especially with the portal additions. I think the wide receiver room will be top 10 nationally. The running back room, with the talent they have in Trey Sanders and also Amani Bailey, I could be underrating them, giving them only a B, but Trey Sanders and Amani Bailey, we haven't seen them play too much, and Sanders was the third, fourth stringer at Alabama last season. So we'll just have to wait and see there. But tight end, wide receiver, quarterback with Chandler Morris, and even the offensive line I think is going to be good. The defense and the run game I think will have question marks because Keandre Miller, when you rush for over 1,000 yards and have nearly 6 yards per carry, or maybe even more than that, I forget exactly, you're a darn good running back. Very good running back. Hope he has success in the NFL. I have them ranked number 20 in my own preseason top 25. In my power rankings, I have TCU at number 25. I think the answer is yes. They can go back-to-back in the playoff, but I think it would be very unlikely given the fact they caught Michigan off guard last season. I don't think with their talent they could reach the national title game again. They just don't have nearly enough experience. They're not going to be catching as many people by surprise. And I don't think they will escape. I don't even think it's possible for them to have an undefeated regular season again. There's Texas, there's Baylor, Texas Tech, Kansas State, Oklahoma, BYU, even Iowa State. There are too many teams that while they're not all super talented outside of Texas, and Texas still has yet to show us that they can be clutch and mentally tough and win a big game, I actually think TCU will beat Texas. There are just too many other teams for TCU to be perfect with the amount of green players and amount of just new things and that they'll have to do. But I think they could go 12-2, either winning the Big 12, beating the runner-up in the Big 12, maybe reaching the college football playoff again but losing in the semifinal, or winning a New Year's Six Bowl, or something along that stretch. I think this team's floor is 8-5. There are many ways they could get 4 or 5 regular season losses easily and either win or lose their bowl game. So the TCU Horned Frogs, I like them better than some. I don't like them as much as others. I know the FPI has them as the 17th best team. I personally have them going 10-2 and finishing third in the Big 12, but their schedule is weak in my mind, and I think this team has enough question marks to where I don't think they're a top 10 team. Really not even close. But if enough things bounce their way, especially with a good head coach like the one they have, they can do some damage. That's just some of my thoughts on the TCU Horned Frogs. They shocked my Wolverines in the Fiesta Bowl last year, and it was very, very painful. But we need teams that do well, teams that develop, that kind of are, sleeper teams every year, like what Michigan State was under Mark D'Antonio, or how Arkansas used to be at times in the SEC. Just teams that do more with less, like Utah today, or Oklahoma State at times under Mike Gundy, and he still does that to this day. And I think that in the new Big 12, I would love to see TCU be that dominant force in the new Big 12 when Oklahoma and Texas leave. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you all around soon. Bye-bye.